Good evening. I'm Jim Zirin, and this is the digital age. Election day is upon us, and irrespective of whether the pundits are correct that this election is a referendum on Obama's presidency, one thing is certain. The outcome of the election on Tuesday, the midterm congressional election, will mold and shape Obama's future political course. Many pollsters predict that Republicans will capture the House and the Democrats will cling to a narrow majority in the Senate. But this is not the real issue. The real issue is whether Obama, a Democrat, can govern a polarized country with a Republican Congress. And here to discuss this issue with us is our resident pollster and political analyst. He is Doug Schoen. Doug Schoen has advised Bill Clinton and Michael Bloomberg and other political luminaries, and he's the author of a co-author of a soon-to-be-released book entitled Mad as Hell, which seeks to explain the Tea Party movement. Doug, we're pleased to welcome you back to the digital age. Now, when you were on the program in February 2009, you made the Doug Schoen contract with America.
Okay.
And this is what it was.
Sure. Jim, you've had me on a couple of times, and one of the things you always insist on, and you're going to get it today whether you like it or not, are fearless predictions. And so I'm going to predict here today that there will be a Republican victory in the House and Senate elections, and they'll take control of both next November. And that hopefully, if I am worthy, you'll have me back next year around this time to talk about the Republican congressional agenda and now how that fits with the Democratic presidential agenda going forward for 2011.
That is a date, and that was in February 2009, and you are worthy. And so now tell us, do you adhere to that prediction? Are the Republicans going to take both houses of Congress?
I think it's certainly a real possibility that could happen. I think the House, by most estimates, is gone for the Democrats, 50, 60 seats. And the Senate, I think there's 7 to 8 seats that we can fairly well confirm will go for the Republicans, and 1 or 2 hanging in the balance. So while the prediction perhaps may not be fully realized, I think there's at least some chance that I will become not only your resident pollster, but your resident oracle.
Well, you are a resident oracle. Now, Obama now has a 37% approval rating by the last count. I mean, is he able really to govern, particularly with a House being dominated by the opposition party?
Well, this is really the question. I think he's going to have to alter his agenda, Jim. I think he cannot pursue the lofty, ambitious agenda of the first 2 years, given what will almost certainly be substantial defeats, if not the loss of both houses.
Well, tell us a little bit about the Tea Party, because you've studied it and you've written about it. How much of an impact is it going to have on this election?
I think it's the engine that's driving the bus. I think we're potentially going to have as many as 6 U.S. senators elected by the Tea Party movement, perhaps as many as 100 members of the House. 1 out of 3 voters next week will be Tea Party supporters, certainly for the Republican Party. So I think the Tea Party movement that was only in its infancy, if it even existed back when we did that last interview, certainly didn't exist this time 2 years ago, is probably the most vibrant force in American political life today.
What is it going to mean for Republican control of the Congress if so many of the members of its voting group or voting majority in the House and possibly even voting minority in the Senate are Tea Party members?
I think it means the Tea Party movement is going to have an effective veto over what the Republicans do. And if the Republicans have control of the House and effective control of the Senate, it means that the Tea Party movement is going to be effectively in the driver's seat.
Let's talk about other voting blocs, because there was an article in just today in the New York Times that shows that or claims that Obama's coalition, women, Catholics, Jews, the less affluent, were breaking for the Republicans, which is an astonishing claim. What does this mean for Obama?
Well, it means that he's got to govern very differently. The hope and change that he promised has not stimulated the level of support and enthusiasm that his election brought, and I think it's going to mean a very different agenda, a more fiscally prudent agenda than the one that he has been championing.
Is it the problem that he promised to overcome polarization and he's in fact intensified it?
Certainly to me, Jim, I sort of thought that when he said there's not a red or a blue America, but a United States of America, he meant it. And instead, you know, with some of his comments recently about reward your friends and punish your enemies and hand-to-hand combat in the House, it is clear to me that he hasn't governed the way he campaigned, and I think he's suffering as a result.
Well, he said that in August of 2008 when he accepted the Democratic nomination. Has he fulfilled that promise that he made in Denver?
To me,
bringing the country together?
To me, the country is further polarized and further divided, and I think many of the people who were so proud and remain proud of the fact that we did elect an African-American president are deeply disquieted by the fact that his election has not resulted in greater unity. Sadly, it's resulted in greater division.
Well, if the Republicans take the House, and it'll be a major political upset if they don't, and if the Democrats narrowly retain a majority in the Senate, not a filibuster-proof majority, but a small majority, which is what everyone expects, what impact do you think this will have on the president in shaping his policies going forward?
I think the president is going to have to compromise. He's going to have to do what Bill Clinton did in 1995 and 96, which is to accommodate the fact that there's a Republican or a Republican-dominated Congress. And whether the president is prepared, as the Wall Street Journal suggested this morning, to compromise on things like budgetary and particularly tax issues remains to be seen.
Are we going to see Obama become the greatest centrist of all time and abandon the programs that he wrote about in his book and that he promised to try to bring change?
Jim, time will tell. I think politically he doesn't have much of a choice, but at this point I don't think he's given any clear indication that that's the direction he's going to go in.
Now, Doug, it's said in marriage that losing is winning.
Okay.
And is losing winning also true in this political campaign?
Well, I would say the following. I think the best result for Obama is the one that I predicted in February of '09, which is losing both houses. I think what the president needs to be successful is Republican accountability to go along with Democratic accountability. What so frustrates the Democrats now, Jim, is that George Bush has managed to get off the hook. Well, the best way to hold the Republicans accountable is to sort of say, look, we have the presidency, the Democrats would say. You Republicans have the House and effective control of the Senate, or in an ideal world, control of both. And you're just as responsible for the gridlock that I think is going to come as the Democrats are in the executive branch.
Well, what will be Obama's posture if he loses both houses of Congress? Or even if he loses one, is he going to go back to the American people in 2 years and say, I tried to do it for you, but the Republicans wouldn't let me?
I think he's going to say, I tried to do it for you, they wouldn't let me, I was true to my values, I've tried to compromise with them, and they're intransigent, and you have a choice, their way or my way.
Now, is there a partner for Obama in the Congress the way Newt Gingrich was for Bill Clinton?
That's the big question. I don't see an obvious partner. And the Tea Party movement, I think, is not going to be up for making the kind of deals that Newt Gingrich and his colleagues made. So to me, the more likely result is confrontation rather than conciliation or compromise.
And the result will be largely legislative gridlock.
That's what I think, and that could lead to the president trying to govern increasingly by regulation.
Now, what, in your opinion, are the issues in this midterm campaign that resonate most with the voters?
Well, the top issue, Jim, is jobs, the economy. We have, I guess, growth of about 1.7%, unemployment of 9.6%. When you factor in the long-term unemployed, the discouraged workers, those that are underemployed, it's closer to probably 15, 18%. So we're in a situation where what the American people want is action and progress on jobs and the economy, and they believe that health care has distracted the Democrats from focusing on what they believe are the real problems facing America.
Well, the Republicans seem to be all over the lot on this because they want to reduce taxes, but yet they want to trim the deficit. They want spending cuts, but they want them all at once. They oppose the stimulus package, which Paul Krugman anyway says is insufficient, that there should be more stimulus. I mean, so, you know, what is the policy that the voters really want to see those in government implement?
Well, I think the voters are pretty clear what they want. May not be achievable in the way they want, but I think they're pretty clear that they want to reduce the size and scope of government. They're looking to do everything possible to hold the line on taxes. They believe somehow if you do that, you will be able to cut enough waste, fraud, and abuse and unnecessary spending out to make a meaningful impact on the deficit, whether that's true or not. And I think they're looking to return, in a certain sense, to, at least in the Tea Party movement's case, core constitutional principles, whatever they might precisely be.
I mean, you have John Boehner, who may become the next speaker, and he's saying that the Democrats must accept, and Obama must accept the end of government stimulus efforts as a means for creating jobs. Now, how is the government going to create jobs if there's no stimulus?
Well, he has a prescription, Jim, whether you like it or not, which is tax cuts. He wants to cut corporate tax rates. He wants to make expensing capital investment fully deductible and an expanded R&D credit. Now, that may well in the short term increase the deficit, but he would argue that in the longer term it'll stimulate enough growth to both create jobs and reduce the deficit. I guess my reaction to that is there's a lot of assumptions built into that. Time will tell.
Now, what about social issues? We used to hear so much about them. We're not hearing so much about them in this election. I mean, where is, I think Dick Morris said that there's that fundamental change, evangelical or social issues just don't exist in this campaign.
I mean, you have a referendum on marijuana in California. You have abortion in a few races. You have gay marriage, again, in some places, but by and large, these issues pale in comparison to our overarching fiscal problems. And having spent a year of my life writing about the Tea Parties, I think it's fair to say that they have deliberately eschewed any real attention or focus on social issues.
So has the Tea Party really made the Republican Party safe for libertarians?
I don't know if it's made it safe for libertarians, but it certainly pulled the Republican Party away from any possibilities that Susan Collins or Olympia Snowe will have the kind of sway that we probably thought at the beginning of the Obama administration they might have.
Now, what about the Pelosi factor? Pelosi seems to be the lightning rod for all the vitriol and all of the heat from the right. Is she a political liability?
She sure is. I think there's the bus that the RNC chairman Michael Steele is now driving around. It was in Harlem last Tuesday. The Fire Pelosi bus. I think the polling I've seen have shown that her negative is sky high through the roof, and she is, as a San Francisco Democrat, probably not in the mainstream of American political life.
Well, she was recently interviewed about the personal attacks where she's called everything from a reckless driver to a monster. And she said the following, quote, "You didn't come here to be in a popularity contest. You came here to get a job done. And if you're going to do that, you're going to be throwing some punches, and you'd better be ready to take some. You're in the arena, so they have to discredit you. If I were not effective, they wouldn't care about me." Do you agree with her? Has she been effective?
I think she's been effective for her own agenda. I think you wouldn't have the health care bill having passed without her work. But that being said, I think there's a higher purpose. I think there's building national consensus and doing what more than just your delegation wants to do. And I don't think she's achieved everything that she or the Democratic Party would have wanted to achieve. And I think that part of the reason the Democrats will be less successful Tuesday than they might otherwise have been is a reaction against her leadership.
Well, she says she's all for the middle class. I mean, no more Democrats saying we're for the forgotten man at the bottom of the economic pyramid. They're all stressing the middle class. Republicans are too.
Yeah,
The election's about the middle class.
And the middle class has spoke pretty loudly, as you suggested at the beginning of the interview.
Now, what about the use of the internet in this campaign? Are they using Facebook and Twitter effectively to raise money and to get their message across?
They are. I mean, I don't think there's as much small dollar fundraising on the Democratic left as there was in prior years, certainly in 2008. But I would say, Jim, for the Tea Party movement, it's fair to say, but for social media and the internet, there wouldn't be a Tea Party movement. There wouldn't be the enormous explosion virally across the country of a leaderless movement with millions of people seemingly spontaneously taking action. You couldn't do that without the internet. 800 numbers just wouldn't cut it. So I think we're in an era where movements can and will develop because of the power of the web in ways that's very hard to fully understand or anticipate now.
Now, when Obama took office, he made his priority the health care bill. And that was the crown jewel of his program. And he waged a campaign himself for the health care bill, and eventually he got a health care bill. The Republicans have vowed to roll it back, to repeal it. That's been an issue again and again in this campaign. But meanwhile, we haven't spent a dime on the health care bill yet. It's to come, and I suppose it could be modified. Why is this such a flaming issue?
Well, I think the health care bill represented Democratic overreaching. I think there was a desire to fix health care, to rein in cost, and certainly do things like pre-existing conditions and portability. But I don't think there was a desire to immediately cover 32 million additional people, recognizing that if you do that, it's going to put more pressure on the system, raise costs, and put more stress on doctors. I think there was a compromise that was unfortunately not pursued. And I think the American people see healthcare as a metaphor for an administration gone wrong. They think that whatever we should have done, that it wasn't worth the 6 or 9 months that it took, and it wasn't worth the emphasis it got given our ongoing economic problems.
But it's become an ideological issue. It's said to be socialistic, disregarding that, I don't know, 5 or 6 presidents tried to get universal health care, and they failed to do it, including Ronald Reagan, who wanted it. I mean, it seems so strange that, of course, it's hard to understand all the aspects of the bill, but why it has become such a polarizing issue.
It's a symbol. For the Democratic left, it's a symbol of what needed to get done. There was a moral imperative to cover 32 million people, and indeed a lot of people on the Democratic left, as you know, felt almost embarrassed that there wasn't a so-called public option. And for those on the right, it became a symbol of government excess and big spending. And while the provisions of the bill haven't kicked in, there's fear that it's going to lead to the explosion in costs that some commentators have spoken about, and a expansion of the role of government in people's lives. So how it'll play out, we don't know, but we certainly do know that it's one of the main reasons why the Democrats will take a pretty substantial defeat on Tuesday.
Now, what about foreign policy? I mean, America is being challenged around the globe, challenged with Iran having possibly a nuclear potential, challenged in failing to broker a lasting peace in the Middle East, or even any peace in the Middle East, and involved in a war with Afghanistan, backing Karzai, who gets money from Iran and gets bags of money from Iran. Why, this doesn't seem to be an issue in this campaign. No one's mentioning foreign policy.
No one's mentioning Iran, North Korea, Afghanistan, or Iraq.
Why is that?
Well, I think there are 2 reasons. One, I think because Obama largely adopted Republican principles on Afghanistan. 2, we're extricating ourselves from Iraq. And 3rd, there's so many domestic problems that groups like the Tea Party are focusing on. There's been very little attention to foreign policy.
I mean, the Tea Party hasn't taken a position on areas of foreign policy which really could be challenged. I mean, for example, Obama's giving the world a deadline on Afghanistan and saying that we were going to pull out in 18 months, which many experts say was terribly unwise and
It struck
ill-advised.
me as illogical to say, well, we want to negotiate a peace with the Taliban, but if we don't get it done by 2011, we're leaving anyway. What incentive does that give the Taliban to negotiate in good faith?
And it appears that there are negotiations with the Taliban. I mean, is it going to be the typical United States exit strategy of declaring victory even though there is no victory and going home?
It looks to me like that's exactly where we're heading. I mean, I think I read much of the same reporting you do, and I don't see any result other than that unless there's some sort of a agreement with the Taliban. And then the question is, how much validity / importance do you put on an agreement with the Taliban, who may well be taking orders from either Al-Qaeda on one hand, the Haqqani group in Pakistan, or alternatively from powers and forces that are inimical to our own interests?
Let's go back to these hotly contested Senate races. Do you see Boxer beating Fiorina in California?
I do. I think for my prediction of the Republican control of the Senate to be realized, Boxer would have to lose. And right now, polls as of last night, Jim, have her about 5 points ahead.
Of course, Fiorina's out of the hospital now and has resumed campaigning.
Yes.
What about Pennsylvania, Toomey against Sestak?
The race had tightened last week. It's now about a 5 or 7 point lead for Toomey, so I expect him to hold on.
Yeah, Harry Reid, is he history?
Loses.
He's toast.
Yeah, I think so. He's 3 or 4 points behind as we speak. He hasn't been much above 45, 46%. And I've worked and studied Nevada politics for a while. His negative ratings are well over 50%.
Engel is backed by the Tea Party.
She is indeed.
But that hasn't been a minus for her. That's been a plus.
It's been a plus. She's not exactly the most popular person in the state, but notwithstanding that, she's benefited by Tea Party support.
West Virginia, do you see Manchin over Reese?
I see Manchin a couple of points ahead of Racy. Again, if the Republicans are to take over, they need Racy to win. And at this point, that looks like it's unlikely.
So we're back to this razor-thin Democratic majority in the Senate.
That would be my best guess. If I had to amend my prediction today, and since I'm your in-house pollster and oracle, I'll say that my prediction of the House going Republican will be vindicated, and that I'll probably fall 1, perhaps 2 seats short in the Senate of what I predicted in February of 2009.
Well, that is oracular. Now, you co-authored this book with Scott Rasmussen.
I did.
And he's been virtually infallible as a political pollster.
Right.
What is the book about? What did you learn in your research, and what do you write about? Mad as hell.
We were concerned with this movement, this Tea Party movement. Who is it? Why is it? And what's its impact? I mean, people on the right had said it was transforming American politics. People on the left said it was astroturf, phony, not real, no impact, racist. And what we concluded was it was ordinary people, similar to those in the Perot movement, who were fed up with the size and scope of government, many of whom were first-time activists who just basically said, you know, we're mad as hell and we just aren't going to take this anymore and we want to get involved. A lot of them, about a third, Jim, voted for President Obama. So it's not a partisan movement, but it certainly has morphed itself into a wing at this point of the Republican Party rather than an independent political force.
Do you think they'll play a role in the presidential elections?
Absolutely. I mean,
2 years?
I think given that things like the Iowa caucus are dominated by activists, I think Sarah Palin, Mitt Romney, Mike Huckabee, and the other cast of maybe not thousands, but hundreds who might run, will all have to pay deference to the Tea Party if they're going to have any chance of getting nominated.
So how many parties do you think will be on the ballot in the next presidential election?
You know, that's a very good question. I would, if I had to bet 2. But then again, there is so much anger with the established 2-party system that if a viable third-party candidate emerged, I would not count them out, certainly for the popular vote.
Well, you see an independent candidate like Michael Bloomberg?
Well, Michael Bloomberg has said he's not going to run, and obviously I take him at his word. But that being said, I think there are forces larger in America. I think the biggest growing group in American politics are independents. 50, 55, 60% of poll respondents say they want a third party. And it's pretty clear to me as I look at the two parties, the Democrats on the left, the Republicans on the right, the views of those of us in the center are not necessarily fully reflected in the views of the two major parties.
Well, Doug Schoen, my favorite oracle, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Can Obama govern a polarized country with a Republican Congress?
He can. He's going to have to make compromises, and I have to offer a prediction now, which, if nothing else, will get me an invitation back, hopefully on or before November of 2012. I think he can govern. I think his political skills are so substantial that if the Republicans do what I think they'll do, which is to overreach, that he will be very, very competitive in the 2012 election. And I'm saying here today that I expect President Barack Obama to be reelected in 2012, notwithstanding his currently low approvals, which, as you point out, are well below 40%.
Well, that's a very ambitious prediction, and we'll see if that comes true. Doug Schoen, thank you for coming by. And thank you for coming by. Tune in next week for more on the digital age. For the digital age, I'm Jim Zirin. Good night, all the best. Please remember to vote, and also please visit our website at www.digitalage.org.